Fight fans, what is happening? Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, compliments of the season, all of that magical stuff. 2022, let's hope it's a better one in terms of what's been happening. Hopefully this COVID stuff is going to calm down and life can get back to normal. Hopefully it means more fights locally, and hopefully it means a lot of good things to come. Hope you all had a good break. All of you people with your pictures at the beach, I hate you. But anyway, here we are, 2022. Obviously, I'm back in action. I've got a lot of plans, a lot of things I want to do. Obviously, we're full steam ahead with Sub Kings as well. So my time is a little bit weird. And while I'm looking up, there's a Christmas beetle flying around. You're late, dude. Santa's come and gone. Still in that Christmas jive with my Christmas drinking t-shirt on, but no drinking today. So yeah, Sub Kings coming up. We're going to chat about that in this video. We're going to chat about a couple of things you might have missed, and those are mostly fights. I thought I would run you all through the fights that have been announced because there's been a pile. And there's also been some changes in those fights. So kind of just an opportunity just to get you all up to speed in case you were chilling on the beach with no internet and you missed a pile of stuff. So that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to head on over to the big man, Big Marcel's page. It's just going to be a little bit easier for me to run through it all with you. And let's take a look at the fights that are coming up in the UFC that you might have missed. Okay. So as you can see from here on out, there's a whole pile. Ion Kutaleba versus Ryan Spann. Old Johnny Walker back in action against Jamal Hill. Alex Caceres versus Super Sadiq. And the list just keeps going on. If you want to check these all out individually, you can go and have a look at Big Marcel. I've posted the most important ones on my page, but this is where it got juicy. Alex Volkanovski versus Max Holloway. This was the trilogy fight, and it's not to be again. Max Holloway was or is injured and was released almost certainly straight after that. He won't be facing Alex Volkanovski, and we just found out recently it'll come up. Alex Volkanovski will now face the Korean Zombie, the one we've been waiting for, Sterling versus Piotr Yan, and they're gonna settle that belt dispute. And obviously we know what went on with that. I'm not going to get into what I think about the fights. I think I'll do that closer to the time. But this fight has also been postponed. It was originally supposed to be at 2:32 in March. From what I understand, it's going to be moved to April. I'm not exactly sure why. There was a bit of rumblings about something to do with entering the US out of vaccinations or something like that. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I'll try to find that out. But that fight has been moved to from what I'm seeing at the moment, to April. Hopefully it happens. It's a great fight. Barberena versus Matt Brown, that's a great fight. Interesting one here. Bobby Green versus Nax Parat, and the list goes on. Aaron Lipsky back in action there. Big heavyweight clash that gets everyone excited. Derek Lewis versus Tai Tuivasa. I think that's a great fight as well. Should be super interesting. A big step up for Tai Tuivasa, but he's been on a bit of a tear. So you go on a tear, you get tested. That's the way it works, I'm afraid. Another big fight that I'm a big fan of, the Battle of the Rafaels, Dos Anjos versus Fiziev. This is going to be a great matchup. Fiziev also on a tear. You got to step up in competition to see if you're the real deal. I think Fiziev called for this fight. I think it's going to be a good one. Dos Anjos very well-rounded, massive threat, but we know what Fiziev brings now. Okay, moving on. Oh, another good heavyweight fight was Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Marcin Tybura. This is also a very interesting matchup. That's not loading. Marcin Tybura obviously got his self-tan and a new look going, and he just seems to be unstoppable. Jairzinho has been a bit hot and cold, so interesting matchup. We're going to see Kevin Holland at welterweight, and he pulls the Brazilian cowboy, Alex Oliveira. I think it's an interesting matchup and a tough matchup for Kevin Holland, who's on a bit of a skid. So he's going to have his hands full there with that one. What's else here? Misha Tate versus Lauren Murphy. Great ladies fight. This is supposed to be the co-main for this weekend. It was originally supposed to be Michelle Pereira versus it was Muslim Salikov, the king of Kung Fu, which is a massive fight. He's now going to fight Andre Fiallo on late notice there. But nice to see Michelle Pereira still in action for this weekend. We'll get into that card shortly. Joaquin Buckley versus Abdul Razak Al Hassan. Also a good matchup. Should be super interesting. Obviously, Joaquin Buckley's got to live up to that crazy KO, but he's also had a bit of a skid, and so he's got to come back. I think Abdul Razak Al Hassan against the fence on that one as well. But like I said, and the one that everybody's talking about, like I said, I'll get into that as it gets closer to the time. The one that everybody's talking about, Colby Covington versus Jorge Masvidal. Friends turned foes. This is an absolute power play. It's a pay-per-view play. You want to raise the price of the pay-per-views to $75 in the US. These are the kind of fights you got to put on. These are the kind of fights that'll make everybody forget about the price of the pay-per-view. It's the one we want to see. The build-up's going to be super interesting. It's going to be a lot of back and forth, I would guess, from these two guys. Won't get a complaint out of me. I look forward to that one. Okay, so now we can see these fights being changed. Volkanovski versus Sterling, that's been moved. Volkanovski versus Korean Zombie. Sterling versus Yan, that's been moved. And there's a couple of more good ones here. Alexa Grasso versus Jojo Calderwood, I think is a great fight. Interesting style. And the ones that were just announced today, the big one there, Mackenzie Dern versus Tisha Torres. I think that's an absolute cracker. So like I said, there's a whole pile of them. I don't want to drab on it too long and go on about all the fights for too long. You're gonna dial out and get a bit bored. But if you want to check them out, go check out Big Marcel on Twitter or on Instagram. He is the guy that keeps us all up to date with fight news, breaking fight news. I have posted the more intriguing ones on my page as well to try and keep those up to date. But yeah, a lot of big fights to come. Moving on, I mentioned at the top, Submission Kings. That's coming up. If some of you are following Submission Kings, you would have seen a great deal of announcements coming up today. We have got a stacked card. We've got one more announcement to make. I'm not going to give it away just yet. It should be up pretty soon. It's a very, very exciting one. It's going to be involving ladies jiu-jitsu. I'm super excited for it. So we've got that coming up. If you saw today, we released quite a few fights. So the idea at the moment is obviously the big one, which is the 8-man tournament, and that's got 8 of the biggest and best guys we could find, and they're going to be battling it out for 10,000 rand, and that's where the winner takes all comes from. On top of that, we'll have a collection of super fights in the super fight series, as well as our first ever combat jiu-jitsu, which is super exciting. We've got 2 EFC legends in that one. So I'm excited about that one. This is the 8-man lineup. Desley Faithful from Renzo Gracie, Michael Block also from the Cape, Jordan Leclerc also from the Cape, Jamie Gemmel of Ilovo, Gracie Bar Ilovo, Dylan Carrera Miguel, Brandon Newman, Reese van der Merwe. Yaron Caron is injured and he's being replaced by Sandile Manangela. So a very exciting lineup for the 8-man, and this is the big one that everyone's talking about. This will be our first ever title fight. Just a footnote, that is in fact our belt. That's an actual photo. Obviously the photo doesn't do much justice for us, but that is the actual belt that these guys will be fighting for. It will be our inaugural title fight, and it's a heavyweight bout between the enigma that is Johan Oosthuizen and the mighty Zakir Badat. Which should be massively intriguing. Obviously, if you watch the quintet and if you saw Johan competing more recently, he is seemingly unstoppable, but I think Zach can definitely bring the strategy to suit him to get through those minutes. Perhaps strong, heavy top game. Be super interesting. Two very different styles should be very, very interesting. And one of them is going to go home with a belt, which I think is a cool thing. Something we've been working on for pretty long that we're trying to get right. The belts are here. We're excited. We think it's a great matchup, and it's something we're going to be doing going forward. So super, super exciting stuff. Just to flick through some of those fights, Logan van Heerden versus Yusuf Hansrod. These are two young guys who've really been killing it on the competition scene for quite some time. Two guys we're looking to really build for the future. So we look forward to that one. A couple of middleweight super fights. Nico Brits versus Bradley. Nico has initially, we actually wanted to stick Nico in as a dark horse in the 8-man, but he is in fact a white belt, and I was just worried that we're going to push him too fast too soon. He's got a hell of an assignment up against him. As you can see, Brad's collection of medals there. He's competed all over. He's a tough customer. As a guy I used to train with quite a lot. Very, very difficult, very tricky little character. So it should be super interesting. I think if Nico can get past Bradley on this one, we're going to find out if he's the real deal. And I'm sure Bradley's looking to get another medal around that neck over there. One I'm super excited for, Christian Camp versus Cam Pritchard. Chris is also an amazing jiu-jitsu player, and Cam is super, super tough, and he's evolved immensely over the last few years. Two guys that have been doing it for a long, long, long time. So it should be super exciting. And then the combat jits, I mentioned Warren Allison versus Wade Henderson in a light heavyweight combat jiu-jitsu exhibition. I think it's going to be a cracking fight, something different, something exciting. And like I said, we've got one more announcement to make. So stay tuned for that one. It's going to be a pretty cool one. 11th of Feb. Tickets are on sale at Web Tickets. We have very, very limited spectator seats. So I would suggest if you're interested in being there live and in person, you buy a ticket so you don't miss out. Right, ladies and gentlemen, the fight card coming up this weekend. At long last, fights have returned. It's Calvin Kattar versus Giga Chikadze in the main event. I think it's a cool way to start the year. Started off with a little edging to get us through to the pay-per-view. And this is what we're dealing with in the main card. Like I said, Calvin Kattar versus Giga Chikadze. Michelle Pereira, which we mentioned, had a change of opponent to Andre Fiallo. Caitlin Chikagian versus Jennifer Maya, which is an interesting ladies flyweight bout. Brandon Royval versus Rogerio Bantarin. These are two flyweights that are just on the door of staying in touch with the title contention. So they'll be putting on big performances there. Jake Collier versus Chase Sherman. Bill Algeo versus Joanderson Brito. This is obviously first card back just to get your beaks wet. Nothing too crazy, but I think the main event is where it's all at. That's going to be a super top heavy kind of event. Calvin Kattar versus Giga Chikadze, I think it's a super interesting fight. And these are the stats. If you've been watching these sort of breakdown videos I've been doing, these are the stats that I found interesting. Let's start with Calvin Kattar. Okay, I hope you can all see that. Okay, so 11 KOs, a 59% finish rate. I think it's no secret that, especially in that sort of division, it's so hard to say. I don't want to say that, like, I mean, there's everybody, and then there's Max Holloway and Alex Volkanovski. They're just on a different level. We don't see that many stoppages in this division. So I think a 59% finish rate is nothing. It's not uncommon. It's a kind of thing. The next stat, this is the one where Calvin makes up the difference. 5.07 strikes standard per minute. That is a great output volume. And that's his game. You know, he's gonna be in your face. He's gonna come forward, hell of a chin, hell of a heart, overwhelm you with volume, good combinations, push you back. And that's the key for him. That's his style. We saw how he was out-volumed against Max Holloway, and I think that was one of those freak things. I don't think we can read too much into that, but he's got to kind of come back and reassert himself in the division. And the guy like Giga Chikadze is just flying at the moment. You know, he's unbeaten in the UFC. It's a tough matchup. And this is the way it goes, man. When you're at the top, you've got to kind of figure these kind of things out. But I would say this would be Calvin Kattar's, his game plan would be pressure. It would be volume. Perhaps his team would have said, like, let's focus on the accuracy. Let's pick our shots a little bit more. When we have the opportunities, let's try to land the power, earn the respect of the hands early, and just try and keep Giga on the back foot. Striking defense is at 50%, which isn't too bad, and his striking accuracy at 42%. And that's what I'm alluding to. I think his accuracy could be slightly better. I think a lot of these stats obviously would have been damaged from the Max Holloway fight, which we understand. And if you look at that at the bottom, strikes absorbed per minute, that tells a story. It had a lot to do with the Max Holloway fight. But he's definitely going to have to try and be more accurate, I would guess. Perhaps try and change levels and give Giga things to think about. We know the Giga kick that's become quite famous. I think he's got to be wary of that as well. But yeah, I think Kelvin has the tools to get a win here. I do see it going to a decision. I think he's got to be smart on his approach. He's got to keep the pressure. He's got to keep his foot on the gas, and he's got to be slightly more accurate than he has been, which is obviously easy for me to say sitting here. It is a hell of a tough fight. But I think Kelvin has the tools. You know, he's going to have to figure a couple of things out. I think Giga's carries a lot of power, and it's almost like an awkward power, if I'm honest. Like, I don't really know how effective it is, but he's definitely stopping guys, especially with the legs. And he does bring a interesting puzzle to solve. When you look at Giga, 9 KOs, 71% finish rate, which is a way higher than what we saw. Striking accuracy at 45%, which is very similar to Kelvin. Volume a lot lower, 3.76 per minute, but I think that would be allude to the finish rates. You know, he does find the finish more than most guys, so he's not really that big volume kind of puncher, more settled, more relaxed, picks his shots, and has a wide variety of attacks on the feet. And I think that's what makes him different. And he's also one of those guys who's pretty good going back and going forward at the same time. But I would think that Calvin would want to keep that in boxing distance. And I think that's where you would want to try and keep Giga. I think that's where you would have the most success. We know about the body kicks and the kicks in general. You don't really want to hang around in that kicking distance for too long. So yeah, interesting. Like I said, 7-fight win streak in the UFC. He's undefeated in the UFC. And his striking defense of 61%. Again, that's going to allude to the accuracy of Calvin Kattar and what he's going to have to do to get that right. Striking defense, striking volume. I think these are going to be the secrets. Maybe in these matchups, we might see someone take it to the ground. Super interesting fight. I'm very excited about this one. The rest of the card's not the most exciting, if we're honest, but we can take that main event all day. So yeah, happy to have fights back. Excited that we're going to be up early in the morning to watch some fights. Don't know if we're going to be up for this one. Maybe we just catch it when we get up. Yeah, happy to have fight week back. Just a couple other things I want to top on. A lot of people have been reaching out to me about JP Base and Cheyenne. Look, guys, to be honest, it's a personal thing. It's not really an MMA thing, and that's kind of where I take my stand on that. I try not get too involved in those kind of things. I don't think we should be talking to MMA journalists about marital problems. We should be talking about the sport. I understand what's been happening with MMA fighting and Mike Heck just trying to play his part and get both sides. But at the end of the day, he's an MMA journalist, and he's getting beats. It's sad to see. I hope they figure it out quietly, and that's all I'm going to say on that. It's not really an MMA thing. That's a personal thing. So please stop sending me and asking me questions, because I don't know the answers. What I do know is what's available, and yeah, that's what I'm going to say on that. McGregor versus Oliveira, that's the last thing I'm going to say tonight. If that fight happens for a title, I think we all have to stop watching MMA. But anyway, that's the power of Conor McGregor. There's been a lot of other talk in the news, a couple of cool things coming up. Alpha MMA returning. That's at the end of the month, 29th of Jan, I want to say. 11th of Feb, Submission Kings. 5th of March or 6th of March, EFC returns. Luke Michael versus Panga Tresor. Great bit of action coming up. So guaranteed you've got something to watch once a month from here on out, at least. So get excited. I hope you've had a good holiday. I hope you had a good rest. Thank you for tuning in. Wish you all the best for 2022. The longer format podcast will be back. Interviews will be back. And just maybe not as religiously as it was, but we're definitely coming back. I've got some cool things lined up. I've got some cool guests that I want to talk to. And yeah, we'll chat to you soon. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.